Okay, what if you could have your own personal power plant? One that fits inside a shipping container and literally runs on just air and electricity. Sounds like sci-fi, right? Well, it might be closer than you think. Today, we're going to dig into a technology that promises exactly that, a power plant in a box. Wow, okay, made from air and electricity. That is a seriously bold claim. Your first thought is probably, how is that even possible? It feels like it breaks the rules of physics or something. But that is the core promise of this system, NovaSpark. So let's dive in and see how it actually works. But before we get into the tech, let's just ground ourselves in why this even matters. I mean, really think about it for a second. What happens when the power goes out? And not just for a couple of hours, but for days, or even longer. Everything just stops. Businesses, hospitals, our own homes, it all grinds to a halt. And frankly, it's happening more and more. And the thing is, our energy grid is a lot more fragile than we like to think. It's getting hit from all sides. We've got wildfire shutoffs on one coast, crippling ice storms on another, and just general instability all over. And if you're in a remote location, forget about it. You're probably stuck with expensive, dirty diesel fuel that has to be trucked in constantly. It's a huge headache, and it's a problem that's screaming for a better solution. So that's the problem. What's the answer? Well, this is where the whole idea of a power plant in a box comes in. It's a totally new way of thinking about energy independence, one that lets you just sidestep that fragile grid altogether. Now, this is the really critical part to understand. This system isn't just a big battery, and it's not just a generator, it's the whole shebang, all in one. It actually creates its own fuel, hydrogen, on the spot, then it stores that fuel, and whenever you need power, it converts it back into clean electricity. It's a complete closed-loop system. And if you put it head-to-head with the old-school alternative, the diesel generator, it's not even a contest. Instead of spewing dirty exhaust, its only emission is pure water vapor. Instead of that loud, rumbling engine, you get a quiet hum. But the biggest deal? You're not waiting on fuel trucks anymore. You've got power for days, not just for a few hours. All right, now for the part that sounds like a magic trick. How in the world do you make electricity out of thin air? Let's peel back the curtain and look at the science. And you know what? It's actually a fascinating and surprisingly simple process. So here it is, the whole recipe in 5 steps. Step 1, the system literally just pulls moisture, water vapor, right out of the air around it. Pretty cool. Then, step 2, it uses electricity, maybe from a solar panel, to split that water into hydrogen and oxygen. Step 3 is simple. That hydrogen gets compressed and stored away for later. And when you need power, step 4 kicks in. A fuel cell takes that stored hydrogen, combines it with oxygen from the air, and boom, you get electricity. The only thing left over is water. And finally, step 5. A bunch of smart controls manage this whole process, 24/7, all on their own. Let's just pause on that second step, electrolysis, because it is the absolute heart of this whole thing. All it means is using electricity to split water into its 2 parts, hydrogen and oxygen. You're basically taking electrical energy and storing it in the chemical bonds of hydrogen. In other words, you're creating a perfect zero-carbon fuel that you can use whenever you want. And the storage you get here is just massive. We're talking up to 168 hours of totally autonomous power. That's an entire week of electricity completely off-grid. Think about that compared to a typical battery that might get you a few hours. This is what long-duration storage is all about, and it is a total game changer for being resilient. Okay, so the science is definitely cool, but what does this actually do for people out in the real world? Let's take a look at where this power plant in a box is already making a huge difference. First up, let's talk about off-grid communities. Remote towns, maybe an island, or a lodge way out in the wilderness. Right now, their big problem is that they're totally dependent on those noisy, expensive diesel generators. For them, the solution is a no-brainer. Clean, quiet power that lasts for days without ever needing a fuel delivery. That's what real energy independence looks like. So what about places that are connected to the grid? Well, this is where it gets really smart. During an emergency, like a wildfire or a big storm, this system can create what's called a microgrid. It just seamlessly disconnects from the main power lines and creates its own little energy island, keeping critical places like a hospital or a data center running for days. It makes them totally immune to the blackout happening all around them. Of course, whenever you start talking about hydrogen, people get curious and they have questions, about safety, about how practical it is.
So let's tackle those head on and see how these things are built to be safe, quiet, and ready for the real world.
Look, when it comes to hydrogen, safety is job number one, period. And this isn't some science fair project, it's a heavy-duty industrial product. These systems are packed with layers and layers of protection. We're talking strict compliance with safety codes, gas detectors everywhere, fail-safe ventilation, emergency shutoffs. I mean, the whole 9 yards. Safety is literally engineered into it from the ground up.
And practically speaking, the design is just really smart. The whole thing is built inside a standard 40-foot shipping container, which means you can truck it, ship it, or train it just about anywhere. Each one of these boxes kicks out 200 kilowatts of power, and they're tough. They're built to work in freezing cold and scorching heat.
And all of this brings us to a really big final question, doesn't it? For decades, we've thought the solution to our energy problems was just to build a bigger, more connected grid. But what if a technology like this points to a totally different future? A future where our power is local, it's resilient, and it's made right where we need it. Maybe the future isn't a bigger grid. Maybe, for some of us, it's no grid at all. Definitely something to think about.